The Kraken. For centuries, terrified sailors whispered stories of a massive, nightmarish beast lurking in the freezing, turbulent depths of the northern seas. They said this creature was so unimaginably huge that when it rested on the surface, it looked like a cluster of islands, tricking exhausted navigators into dropping anchor right on its back. And when it was hungry, it would wrap its massive suction-cupped tentacles around the wooden hulls of galleons, dragging screaming crews down into the inky black abyss. It was considered the ultimate sea monster, the stuff of pure nautical terror and superstition, until the late 19th century, when washed-up, rotting carcasses and heavily scarred whale bodies started telling a very different, very real story. Scientists began piecing together the physical evidence, realizing that the mythological Kraken was actually the giant squid, scientifically known as Architeuthis ducks. We now know these deep-sea predators can grow up to 40 feet long, equipped with razor-sharp beaks and eyes the size of dinner plates, perfectly evolved to hunt in the pitch-black ocean depths. The terrifying encounters ancient mariners described were almost certainly exaggerated sightings of these elusive cephalopods battling massive sperm whales right at the surface of the water. Modern marine biologists have even found giant squid suckers with serrated teeth rings embedded in whale skin, confirming exactly how dangerous these animals truly are. It proves that our darkest ocean legends were grounded in cold biological fact. But the sea is incredibly vast, and sometimes the things hiding on solid land are just as unsettling.
The Hobbits of Flores. Local folklore on the remote Indonesian island of Flores spoke of the Ibu Gogo, strange, human-like creatures that were covered in coarse hair, walked awkwardly, and stood barely 3 feet tall. The village elders warned that these tiny, mysterious forest dwellers would steal crops, kidnap wandering children, and vanish into the dense, unforgiving jungle without a single trace. For a very long time, Western researchers dismissed these tales as just another cultural myth, a spooky campfire story designed to keep kids from wandering off into the dangerous woods at night. But then, in 2003, archaeologists digging deep in a damp limestone cave called Liang Bua unearthed something that shook the entire scientific world to its core. They found the remarkably well-preserved skeleton of an adult female hominin, but she was shockingly small, exactly the size vividly described in the local legends. Researchers officially named this completely new species Homo floresiensis, proving that a miniature, distinct species of human had walked the earth and actually shared this isolated island with our modern human ancestors. Evolutionary biologists believe they underwent island dwarfism, shrinking over thousands of years to survive on limited resources, even hunting miniature, extinct elephants in the brush. The discovery forced anthropologists to rewrite human history entirely, confirming that the mythical Ibu Gogo were likely real, breathing hominins that survived far later into history than anyone thought logically possible. And while tiny humans hiding in the jungle sound like pure fantasy, ancient history is full of seemingly impossible tales, including glittering artifacts that supposedly possessed supernatural powers.
The Viking Sunstone. According to the ancient Norse sagas, Viking navigators wielded a magical, glowing crystal that allowed them to find the sun even when the sky was thick with blinding fog or heavy winter snow. The epic stories claimed this mystical stone could harness the raw power of the gods, catching invisible rays of light to guide their wooden longships across the treacherous, featureless expanse of the North Atlantic, long before the invention of the magnetic compass. Historians wrote this off as poetic exaggeration, just another piece of fanciful Viking mythology, meant to make their legendary blood-soaked voyages sound even more epic and divine. But the mystery was finally solved when marine archaeologists pulled a strange, milky, rectangular crystal from the wreckage of an Elizabethan ship that sank in the English Channel in 1592. scientists thoroughly analyzed the mysterious artifact and realized it was a piece of Iceland spar, a naturally occurring calcite crystal with incredibly unique polarizing properties. When you hold this precise stone up to a completely cloudy sky, it actually splits the light, changing its internal color to pinpoint the exact location of the sun through the thickest, darkest overcast weather by detecting ultraviolet polarization. The magical artifact of the Norse gods was a genuine, highly advanced navigational tool, brilliantly utilizing complex optical physics centuries ahead of its time. But as incredible as ancient maritime technology truly was, nothing quite compares to the absolute shock of discovering that the most famous fictional city in ancient poetry was actually a real breathing place.
The City of Troy. Homer's epic poem, The Iliad, painted a vivid, bloody picture of a magnificent, impenetrable fortress city that withstood a brutal 10-year siege, culminating in the legendary deception of the wooden Trojan horse. For thousands of years, the world's leading classical scholars firmly believed that Troy was nothing more than a beautiful myth, a completely fictional backdrop created purely for Greek storytelling, moral lessons, and dramatic tragedy. It was universally considered a fairy tale until a stubborn, wealthy, self-taught archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann decided to take Homer's ancient text completely literally in the late 1800s. Armed with the Iliad as his only geographical map, he began aggressively excavating a dusty hill in modern-day Turkey called Hisarlik, and what he found buried deep beneath the dirt shocked the global academic establishment. He didn't just find one single city. His excavation teams uncovered the staggering ruins of several ancient cities built directly on top of each other, complete with massive defensive walls, burnt debris, and shattered weapons. Modern stratigraphy eventually pinpointed a specific layer known as Troy 7A, which perfectly matched the timeline and the catastrophic fiery destruction of the late Bronze Age collapse. Science and modern archaeology finally joined forces to confirm that the legendary Trojan War likely had a very real, very violent historical basis, turning one of the greatest myths of human history into indisputable fact. Unearthing a lost city of war is absolutely mind-blowing, but sometimes nature leaves behind evidence of beasts so terrifying they seem ripped straight out of a horror movie.
The dire wolf. Pop culture and dark fantasy novels have deeply popularized the image of massive, terrifying wolves, the size of small horses, stalking the frozen wilderness and hunting down anything foolish enough to cross their path. They're almost always depicted as mythical, magical companions, or terrifying supernatural monsters of the dark, far too massive and ferociously powerful to have ever existed in the real, natural world. But paleontologists digging in the sticky, bubbling tar pits of La Brea in Los Angeles pulled out thousands of suffocated skulls that proved this nightmare predator was entirely terrifyingly real. Scientifically classified as Anochion dirus, the dire wolf roamed the Americas during the harsh Pleistocene epoch, and it was significantly heavier and more robust than any modern canine. It possessed a crushing bite force, specifically evolved to shatter the thick bones of struggling wild horses, massive bison, and even giant ground sloths that got stuck in the treacherous tar. Advanced DNA analysis recently revealed something even more surprising. They weren't just big gray wolves, but an entirely different ancient evolutionary lineage of canine that evolved in complete isolation for millions of years. They were brutal apex predators that completely dominated the icy landscape for hundreds of thousands of years, before sudden climate shifts and a rapidly vanishing food supply wiped them off the map forever. Finding the ancient bones of a monstrous predator is one thing, but uncovering an entire, sprawling underwater world that vanished in a single night is a completely different level of terrifying.
The City of Heracleion. Ancient Greek historians wrote extensively of a bustling, incredibly wealthy Egyptian port city that served as the grand gateway to the pharaohs, a place overflowing with immense stone temples and untold golden riches.
The old texts claimed this magnificent metropolis simply vanished one day, swallowed whole by the Mediterranean Sea in a wrathful, apocalyptic act of the gods, leaving absolutely no trace of its existence behind. For centuries, modern archaeologists scoured the treacherous Egyptian coastline, finding nothing but shifting sand and empty water, leading them to confidently conclude that the great trading hub was entirely fabricated by ancient storytellers. But in the year 2000, a brilliant French marine archaeologist, using highly advanced magnetic resonance technology, detected strange, massive anomalies buried deep beneath the muddy ocean floor in the Abu Qir Bay. Divers plunged into the murky depths and were suddenly greeted by a stunning, eerie sight: colossal stone faces of forgotten pharaohs staring right back at them from the watery darkness. They had actually found the lost city, perfectly preserved under the sea, with gigantic 60-foot granite statues, thousands of gold coins, and the wrecks of over 60 ancient ships frozen forever in time. Geologists eventually determined that a massive earthquake triggered a catastrophic event called soil liquefaction, literally turning the solid ground into liquid and dropping the entire city into the ocean in a matter of hours, proving once and for all that the ancient apocalyptic warnings were terrifyingly true.